Tensions are high at universities across the U.S. with pro-Palestinian protesters criticizing Israel's response to Hamas's attack in October. The situation on one campus escalating last night in this latest video showing protesters at Columbia University storming one of the campus's main buildings, smashing windows and barricading themselves inside. In Columbus, 36 demonstrators are facing charges for their roles in protests against Israel. So when it comes to free speech and the First Amendment, what is and what is not protected in these protests that we are seeing across the country? It's the big question. So here to break it down is Dan Coble. He is a law professor at Capital University here in Ohio. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Yes, first of all, everyone wants to know, okay, where are they crossing the line potentially when they're protesting? So what is free speech? What is protected on college campuses, and how does it go too far?
Well, generally speaking, speech and the advocacy of messages are protected and are generally fostered even on public property. However, conduct can be reasonably regulated by the government. So, to use your initial example, breaking into buildings, smashing windows, that's conduct. That's not speech at all. So that really is not a First Amendment issue, and ordinary principles of law and order would apply, and the people who damage property would likely be punishable without much of a First Amendment issue being raised. On the other hand, particularly on government property, government is limited in its ability to enforce rules to suppress a message with which it disagrees or which makes some people feel uncomfortable. So if the universities are trying to limit a message, if they're trying to keep peaceful expression from occurring in a place where they have ordinarily allowed peaceful expression, that would be something that would be subject to the First Amendment.
Yeah, we're tight on time. I just want to bring this up because happening today, House Speaker Mike Johnson and other Republicans, they're saying and suggesting the National Guard might be needed to be called in at some of these college campuses to monitor the situation, maybe take action. Democratic Senator Tim Kaine tweeted out today, he says National Guard is not the solution to campus protests across the country. Recall what happened during the Vietnam War. We are right upon the next anniversary of the May 4th shootings at Kent State. 54 years ago. Did we learn anything from that? And do you think that we're going to get to that point?
Well, I think that calling out the National Guard in response to largely peaceful protests is an overreaction and could well simply be a political pandering tool. The danger that you have is that when you militarize a free speech situation, it often can escalate and lead to the sort of tragedy that we had at Kent State in Ohio. So I think that a lot of thought has to be given to how to lawfully protect people who are protesting peacefully and how to protect government property and university activities from disruption by speech. So I think that if people continue to view this simply through a lens of protest is simply unlawful, that undermines our history of being able to disagree peacefully, with our history of changing minds through lawful protest and only using force as a last resort.
Yeah,
force
definitely
should not be a first resort.
Yeah, and
to
it was a tragedy
protest.
At Kent State, losing 4 students to something similar, but obviously a lot of differences between the types of protests. Definitely the law, though, doesn't change, and I really appreciate you joining us here to break it down.